retail, that is not a retail use. It would be an automotive service use. And I've told, as I said before, they could sell you the oil and you go out and put it in your car. That would be okay. But to sell you the oil and put it in your car, then that's automotive service. There's a line everywhere. So basically, they're coming before you to ask for a major modification to the PD to allow automotive services to go in the PD in that corner on the other side of Kroger's, as I describe it. The access will be through the Kroger's parking lot. Y'all saw this on the sketch plan last month, and that's it. There's not a lot of back and forth traffic or whatever. It's just to allow that use to go in there.
Thank you, sir. Is there a representative of the applicant here to speak? If you could approach the podium, please. And if you'll again give your name and address when you...
Yes, sir. Hi. Thank you for having me. My name is Larry Ziner. I'm with Anderjar Construction. We're the development arm coordinators for Valvoline oil change. I live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. You want my specific address? Okay. They all have it in the planning department.
Yes, sir. Yes, is there anything we need to, any updates to this project?
Your planner described it very, very clearly what our goal is. Again, the operations of the Valvoline is you don't get out of your car, you drive in, get your oil changed, 10 minutes, you leave, you never get out of your car, really. So, again, calling it an auto service by its definition is not really it. It's more of a service-oriented business, but yes, we put oil in cars.
Thank you, Mr. Ziner. Are there any questions for Mr. Ziner?
Is it just oil changes, or is it?
Oil changes, inspections, air filters, and wiper blades. That's 99% of it. Air and tires. They don't rotate tires. They don't do tune-ups. They don't do anything else that requires there's no overnight parking. There's no, make an appointment, come in, you drive in, sit in your car, and leave. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open it up to public comment, if there is any public comment.
And just for y'all's resources, the site plan or the draft overview is up on the screen for you.
And this is the same site plan. There were no changes from when we looked at this.
Correct.
Previously. Seeing no interested speakers, we'll close the public comment section and move to final comments. Any other final comments from the commission?
Pretty straightforward.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve. Get it back out in front of me. You're better at this than I am, Tim. Go ahead.
A motion for approval on PD 23-002 River Common Plan Development Modification. I'm making a motion that we send it to the City Council for approval by the Planning Commission.
Second?
Second.
Who was the second?
Mr. Harbison was first in.
Maybe it again.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 And opposed? So approved.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for...
The next step is I'll communicate with the planning department?
Yes, sir.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming. All right.
Now we go
We'll go
to
back to the book.
the book.
Please open the book. I will defer the comments going forward to our planning director.
I, I believe we have everything situated in the code except for one section, unless y'all identify something for me tonight. And that would be section 13.3.2, point 3, which has to do, and I'll read it, except as expressly permitted in a riparian buffer, property that contains natural watercourses, creeks, or drainage basins shall not be subdivided or platted as individual lots for resale in further development within a distance of 50 feet on the side of each bank of the creek, watercourse, or wetland or drainage way. Such property shall be platted as open space. That was, there was some discussion about that last time. In your packet, you had a memorandum from Tom Zeeser, Director of Engineering. He knew more about the history of where this came from than me. It basically comes down to preserving the creek bank. If you place an easement on there, or no build on a plat, that's something that very often homeowners will encroach on. I can take you to one subdivision that was supposed to have a 20-foot undisturbed buffer on the back of it. It was put on the subdivision plat and all of that stuff. And as it built out, everybody built into that buffer and it disappeared. And that is why we have the section in here that we do, bottom line. A couple of things that from the memo, that it only applies to lands that are required to be protected. And to allow otherwise would place a significant burden on the city, as these lands would fall into the ownership of private homeowners. So there again, by not letting it be on their property, you're preserving the stream banks and keeping them out of that 50-foot. If you allow it on the plat, then that's their property and they feel like they'll be able to build into it. And to be honest with you, there's probably no way that the city is going to be able to enforce that except after things get built. Because there's a lot of accessory buildings, fences, stuff like that that gets built without permits. So with that being said, that's the background on it. Now, if you wanted a staff recommendation, the planning department would say, leave it lay. It has worked for us all these years. It has been effective, and why change something that's working? The other thing that Mr. Zeeser's memorandum noted, and I have to look at him for the institutional knowledge, is we haven't received any pushback or complaints. So that's the comment from the city side of it. Sir?
I missed your point on the recommendation. You said leave it as is.
That would be our recommendation. It has worked well for us in the past. It's been there since about 2008. We haven't received a lot of or any complaints about it. So, yeah, it is. If something came up, like a old family home or something that was being divided, we could handle that on a case-by-case basis through the variance or waiver process.
Now, does the easement, so that, you're basically saying that we're going to leave it as an easement?
No, sir, I'm using, our recommendation is to leave it as not being platted, not being part of a lot. If you put it on a lot and then place a no-build easement on it, as an undisturbed buffer, it's going to get disturbed. If you plat it as open space, people is going to stay on their side of the property line. And if they don't, we've got more recourse there. If they come into open space, we're not telling them what they can do in their backyard with property they own.
Just to clarify, though, we are proposing that we increase that space from 25 feet to 50 feet, or your suggestion is to leave it 25 feet?
No, leave it at 50 feet.
Okay.
Yes, leave it at 50 feet. What I was talking about was the platting.
So when I'm looking at a master plat of the subdivision, that is going to be, so I've got all my different lots, rectangles, squares, pies, and whatnot. That space is going to be delineated as being open space,
Yes, sir.
not a part of your plat.
Not a part of an individual lot.
I was just looking at one the other day, really ritzy neighborhood in Augusta, and they were in a floodplain. Well, the house is not going to be in the floodplain, but the lot went all the way back down to the creek bed, and it was almost if the creek was their creek, because it went through their lot, and so I just kind of had that tattooed in my head, but now I understand exactly what you're saying.
And there is some, I have seen plats where it goes to the middle of the stream.
Yes.
So it takes that out.
I'm with you, and I agree.
Are there any other comments from the commissioners?
And last month, there was a question about if there was a pond or something on a lot, a large lot, and it wanted to be subdivided and maybe split up. I think you mentioned before that would be handled on a case-by-case basis. Is that what would happen there?
It could be, yes, sir. If it was, this is in the development code, so you can always ask for a waiver or variance, whatever's applicable. So, that would be a particular case that you could look at the specific issues and grant either a waiver or a variance, whichever it is. So that's otherwise, you would have the 50-foot no build around the pond. The pond would be open space, and probably an HOA that would have access to it and give these people the rights. Kind of like if you're familiar with the lake at Clark Hill, you have the high water mark, and you have your dock that comes up to but you don't own the shoreline. And that's what you may end up with there as well.
So, for my edification, so if I had a subdivision that did not have a homeowners association, and it was designated as open space or green space, a pond, a 5-acre pond, does that in itself makes it city managed and controlled pond?
No.
It does not.
This is only if it is deeded to the city and accepted by city council, does that become the city responsibility. That's one of the things we would look at on that particular issue when we got something like that.
I was going to say, Mr. Winter has been very helpful with his comments through this process. Do you have anything to add to this conversation tonight? We appreciate you coming out. I want to make sure we give you a chance to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger. Jason Winkter, 17578 Atomic Road, Aiken, 29803. I talked to Tom Ziza earlier this week, end of last week maybe. And my bigger question in this section is the expansion of the buffer from 25 feet, which is currently, to 50 feet. And the issue of now we've got an additional 25 feet we cannot plat in that lot. And so, going bigger picture, City Council has been pushing for infill development. Well, all the tracts, or not all, a majority of the tracts of land that are left within the city limits have been left there for a reason. There's rough topo, there's wetlands, there's a lot of constricting issues. And so all of a sudden now we're taking, if there's buffers, if there's wetlands in those lands, we're just squeezing those things tighter. And then a lot of the previous sections come into play because, now all those other issues we've talked about in the past have effects on lot size. But in particular to this, currently I think, Mr. Paradise, it's 25 feet from the edge of the wetlands or the state waters or the rested bank in the book. And the proposal is to go to 50 feet.
Correct.
So if you were leaving it as is, like you mentioned, you'd be leaving it at 25 feet.
When I said leave it as is, I meant as it's in this draft,
Okay.
not going back to the 25 foot.
So I'm certainly not going to speak for Tom, but he was not able to make it tonight. But he and I discussed, he said that the additional 25 feet could be platted within lots. And so maybe there's some clarification needs to be needed, because he was very clear about that it would not take away from what we could include in the square footage of a lot. We just couldn't disturb it, but we could, run that back lot line within that additional 25 feet. And that obviously
message has
didn't
not
get.
been conveyed to me.
Okay. So
Um,
that just, well, I'd just like to have, with Tom, some more clarification on, because you think 25 feet is a short distance, but 25 feet here, 25 feet on this side, that's 50 feet, that's a whole road right away.
When we said, just, I can chime in? Yes, sir. Right. When we said 25 and then said 50, I kind of did a 25. Can we, can you entertain me with marking off 25 feet and 50 feet in this room?
So probably total width of the room, roughly, Cam, is 50 feet? And so, we're used to 25 feet. That's almost standard anywhere you go, that's a normal buffer. So then you add, again, that additional 25 feet can add up pretty quick.
How did we come to the conclusion of 50 feet? I know I saw in Mr. Zeezer's notes here that, like, a lot of these other, Aiken County, Richland County, it seems like they all have 50 feet, and I'm not sure, is that where we were basing this off of, was just other cities?
Correct. It was a recommendation from the engineering department to move it to 50 feet. And if you look at what comparable cities and counties are doing, 50 feet seems to be the norm, except for a few that may be a little bit more.
And our experience is this, flip a coin. 50-50, I don't know, depends. Some places 50 feet, some are 25. 25 is more of a state standard. 50 feet is probably locally adopted additional. But the main clarification is, certainly we don't want to give up the additional 25 feet that we can't do any work in. You've already got established 25 feet by the city, 30 feet by DHEC, so you got an additional 5 feet by the state level. But the main question is, can we or can we not plat that additional 25 feet? And Tom seemed to indicate that we could include that in the lot, but it's still not clear in the memo, and it's not clear. It specifically says in the draft that that is part of the riparian buffer that can't be platted, so.
And I go back to the reasons why the city created this policy or this ordinance to begin with. It's for the enforcement. If you move to where you can build out to 50 feet, or from 25 to 50 feet, you're gonna have people building in there, if you can count that as part of your lot. And that's the reason to move it all out to 50 feet, keep it uniform, and keep it where it's not platted and part of the lot.
So I would just ask maybe, I don't know if it just goes from here and Mr. Zeser gives clarification to city council, or he does that prior to y'all making a final vote, but he was very clear with me that you could include that. And again,
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friendly disagreement, and yeah, well, we're good. So that's really, Mr. Speaker, my only comment.
Thank you, Mr. Winter, for sharing. Any other comments?
If I walked out of my front door, from my front door to the street would be 50 feet. My whole front yard. And I've got like a 0.98 of an acre. So it's 240 feet this way. And it goes back to a pie 50 feet in the back. So the way the house was pulled forward, that means that I could not, if that was my backyard, I could not put anything in my backyard. That make sense?
That would not be part of your backyard, though.
So if I flip my house around, and I need you to defend, I need an opposing argument.
If you're looking at the front of your house,
Okay?
all right, your front yard, and we're looking at that as being your backyard.
Correct.
Okay? And the street is the creek.
Correct.
Then your lot, your property, would start where your house is.
But could
And
I,
that would be open space between your house and the creek.
so in essence, I could not put a shed a little bit off of my,
It would not be your property to put a shed
Shed on.
on.
so I would have to push back further.
The lot, the development would
Yeah.
push back further, yes.
So let me be devil's advocate in this example. I could not build my house on the lot. If I flipped it, if that were my backyard, because the pie shape goes this way, and the house would be too wide. So I could not go further toward the pie. So if that was a cul-de-sac, the 50 feet, it was a cul-de-sac coming in, so the 50 feet will be fine. I would have to have redesigned my house because my house is more rectangle. And so I would have had to squeeze it, square it, and go forward.
Well, Mr. Key, if I may,
Okay.
yeah, if this was in effect, and that your lot was platted, and it fronted a creek or pond or, water body, it would be designed around that to accommodate it. What you're trying to do is take your lot and put it in this position, and if it was, your lot was in this position, it would probably have been designed differently from the get-go. So all of that was accommodated in. But you do have a good analogy of the distance, how much to 50 feet is. But remember, while that is your yard, it's your house, that would not be your property if it's not allowed to be platted 50 feet from a stream.
So the image in my head is if 25 feet from the water line, the high water mark there is here, and I've got a two-story house that starts right there, that angle is pretty close to the water line from the roof. Not that things are going to bounce off the roof towards the water line, but
Well, remember that, okay, you're 25 feet right here. Boom.
right.
then you get probably a 20-foot setback.
Right, so there's
So
a
your
setback.
house
Right, I
moves
wasn't accounting,
back.
right, you wouldn't build on the edge of the property line, yeah.
Correct.
That's where my vision fails. Thank you.
I need your dissent from Mr. Winkler's infill. So we're not looking at a subdivision. How will we, I need your, yeah,
Well, I would ask the question of how many.
infill lots are there?
Yeah, correct. And where do we see most of our subdivisions, and where do we see where most of our streams and water bodies need protection?
Would be in the,
And that's typically not in the infill scenarios.
that's what I need.
And again, I understand where Mr. Winkler's coming from. He makes a good argument. He makes me think, which is a good thing. So I just want to make sure we on the do right program too.
Okay, I have one last question. So in 13.3.1, what is creating a difference in like the second definition and the third definition, where it says no portion would be closer than 25 feet versus the 50 feet? Because it does look like we have some kind of designation in there for a 25-foot, but I don't understand what's creating that.
I think that's a typo that should have been changed to 50 feet with the rest of them.
We had the great debate. Mr. Winkler.
Do we have
Mr. Paradise.
a proposal?
Are we at a point now that we're to make a recommendation that the draft be accepted? Are we at that point, or where are we?
Right now, you need to decide what you want to do with this. Do you want to make any changes to this section or not? That was the one kind of outlier that you had to address. And then after you decide how we want, or how you want to address this, then you can entertain a motion if you want to, if the chair would want to entertain a motion to recommend approval to city council as amended with, so when we go to city council, it has in this paragraph what you want in this paragraph.
And is that paragraph, are we to make a motion on that paragraph, or are we just to add it into the overall motion?
We just need agreement on it.
You just need agreement on it. That's the way we've done the other changes.
Okay.
Is there any arguments for changing it back to the 25, or do we leave it at the 50 as it is?
In the great debate, I would agree with staff.
You agree to leave it at 50? Mr. Harbison agrees. Mr. Carter? We have a majority that's in favor of leaving it at 50 feet as it is. That's the end of our changes in the development code book. Do we have a motion
Now,
to?
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry.
I just want to make sure that we're good on changing that 25 to 50 on what Ms. Waddell said. I think y'all had said that before, but we're good on that, right? Okay. Sounds good. All right, sir, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That being resolved, what we need now is a motion to approve presentation of the revised North Augusta Development Code, June 2023 draft for presentation to City Council.
So moved.
We have a motion. Second? Please, somebody. We have a second. Thank you, sir. All in favor of recommending to City Council, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. It has been approved for presentation to City Council.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Next item on the agenda is our staff report. Excuse me, Mr. Paradise, would you share that with us, please?
Well, we are continuing with the Georgia Avenue traffic calming study. We are, we're still going through the processes of several of the developments that we've gotten, but otherwise it's just kind of status quo, moving through.
With no other items on the agenda, do we need a motion to adjourn? Or can I just bang the gavel and say we're adjourned?
Motion and a second, and all in favor, stand up.
There we go. Thank you all for your help. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Huh?